I think we're live now. Hello, everyone. Um, Quick introductions. I'm Ala. I'm a junior marketing manager here at Airfocus, and I'm so happy to welcome you all for the first event of this year. We have quite a few lined up, so make sure to go check our events page. Today we have the amazing David Pereira. Would you like to quickly introduce yourself while we are waiting for more people to tune in? And by the way, please let us know where you're joining from, how's the weather there, and also how is your backlog looking?
Hello. So thanks for inviting me to be here and welcome everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm David, originally from Brazil, now living in Germany. I've been working with digital products for 15 years now, different positions. I was a software engineer at the beginning, then moved to product manager, head of products, and so on. So let's say that one thing that I like doing is sharing all the mistakes I did and my learnings on the way so people can avoid it. So I share my learning with everyone openly, my Substack and so on. Quite active on LinkedIn. It's a little bit about me, and currently I'm leading Omoko, which is a startup and the maritime industry. So we're trying to create some innovation there, and it's quite fun.
Is it going well?
Yeah, it's going quite well. It's been a year that I signed, and now we are. This year is quite promising.
Really happy to hear that. I had a look at the slides from today, and he shares really actionable like strategies how to manage your backlog. Um, just to let you know, you all reach the chat there. If you have any question during David's presentation, please drop your questions there. I will be having I'll have my eyes on them, and after the presentation, we will have a Q&A session, and I have two poll questions for our audience before David starts. So, if you allow me, here is the first question comes. Sorry, I think I have to do this. Yes, people can reach the poll. So the question is, how would you describe your team's current approach to product backlog management? The options are highly effective, somewhat effective, room for improvement, facing significant challenges. Let's get a little bit more. Only half of the people now voted.
Quite interesting.
Yes. Let's see now.
Room for improvement, facing significant challenge. Hmm. Maybe the insights will help today then. So Ala, if you are speaking, I think you're muted. We cannot hear you actually.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to say room for improvement for people who chose this option. You're in the right hands. So I will move forward to second poll question. What is the biggest challenge your team faces in managing the product backlog? Prioritization issues, lack of clear user understanding, process bottlenecks, and others. I like watching the like percentages of the options change. Okay, giving just like a few more seconds. I think I can stop the poll now. Still voting. Okay, that's it. Stop the poll. So the winner is prioritization issues, and the second is process bottlenecks and the lack of clear user understanding. Thanks for answering. We'll make sure to cover these issues in this webinar and the following webinars of airfocus. And now, since we have a good understanding of like what's the issue in your product backlog management, I'll just leave the stage to David for the presentation.
Perfect. So we are going to talk about backlog management. But why should we care about this topic? Because it's painful. That's the reason. So in 2012, I got my first job as a product manager. The thing is, I was a software engineer, and after exchanging with some people in an event, someone approached me and said, "Hey, I have something for you. It is called product manager." I said, "That sounds interesting, but I have no idea what a product manager is." First, I said, "No worry, it's all about communication. So you talk to business stakeholders and you talk to software engineers and you ensure you get something done." My misinterpretation of that was I get a requirement from stakeholders, I put in a backlog, and I refine that with software engineers and we deliver that. And I got quite successful in doing that. So for 2 years, I became a kind of a velocity maximizer. I increased the amount of output the team created. I got confident. I even got a promotion. But there was one thing I was missing, but I didn't know back then. Eventually, I got an interview for Booking.com. I still lived in Brazil. That was already 2014. And what happened during this interview of Booking.com is that I failed miserably. But then I switched back. I said, what if you can help me understand why am I failing? I understand that I don't know the questions of, I don't know the answers for your questions, but I would like to learn a little bit. And I realized that actually I was not the product manager. I thought I was. I was at the best a backlog manager. The only thing I knew was about product delivery. I didn't know anything about product discovery. So it was a revelation to me. But then I moved to another place eventually. I worked for many companies, startups, and so on, from Brazil to Germany. And I realized that many people face the same pain as I used to face. So that's why it's very important to talk about backlog management, because that's just a tiny bit part of your job and shouldn't consume your whole time. There's way more to do than just managing the backlog. But I want to help you today to simplify it. So we are going to talk about overcoming the challenge of the product backlog. And hopefully you are not going to face the trouble I had back then. So let me, I don't know if you see my screen already. I cannot get it.
Not really.
Not really. So let me go back again here just to share. Uh, it says I'm sharing.
Would you please let us know if you see his presentation on the stage? But I don't think so.
Interesting.
Okay, I can just give me a minute. I can quickly help you here.
For me, it says it's sharing.
Would you like unshare it and then share it again, please, for us?
I did that. Let me try again. Share the entire screen. Try again. Sorry for the technical issues. Let's see if it goes now. It's not working.
Okay, I got you. I can just easily do it. I got the slides. Just trying to. Sorry for this technical issue. Please bear with us. Okay, Here we go. Okay, I got it. It's here.
Yeah.
1 second, it's loading. There.
Okay, I can see. Good. All right, so we are gonna do a little bit different without the animations, I guess, then. But I think that can work. I hope everyone can see these slides. Present. So do you see, I don't know if they are seeing these slides right now.
Do you see them now?
I see these slides down, but it's not, I see my face big.
Okay, it's fine. We can just do it this way. Thanks to the technology, we have so many ways to present. 1 second. I will just share my screen, David. If you
Yeah, please.
want to just skip something, please let me know. There we go.
Okay, so I guess it's on the screen. Good. So talking about backlog management, what we will explore today is the common traps. And for that, we need to understand the common scenarios of organization. So what happened is we have multiple teams. And in these multiple teams, if you look at organization in different size and so on, most of the organizations will have a very similar scenario. There will be different teams spread all over there, and all of these teams will have something in common, which is ideas. So all the teams have many, many, many ideas, and many here is with all capital letters. And these ideas, they believe to be the best ideas in the world, and they believe these ideas should go to the product and so on. And at some part of these teams, there will be some team called product team, sometimes scrum team, development team. Doesn't matter the name, but this is a team responsible for getting things done, from transforming an idea into something that drives value. And what happens to most of these ideas is they will go to a product backlog or some kind of thing like that. And the team, product team, will have to exchange with many stakeholders to decide what to do next. Eventually, some idea will go out of the product backlog, become a feature that's very shiny, beautiful, at least we think so. And then this idea will hit the customers. But then something happens. When customers start playing with the idea, they don't really work as expected. And then it's quite scary what happens. And we don't know why. So when we look at that, what is the problem here? There are several problems, but one of the problems that happens is a question we ask. Most probably we're going to ask a question like, how can we accelerate delivery? So we understand if the idea works faster or not. I would say that there's a more important question, which is how can we drop the bad ideas fast enough? Because not all ideas are worth pursuing. And if we fall into the backlog trap that every idea that we have, we put into the backlog, I'm sorry, but then the teams will become feature factory, meaning that all that matters is delivering more features, features and features and features. So it's not that fun to have to be in this scenario. So let's talk about a few traps that we have here. I think we will need to skip the Mentimeter because I cannot share my screen. The very classical one, and this is the very first one, it is the extensive product backlog. And that I ask you to reflect. How many items do you have in your product backlog? So if you have more than 100, should be worried. If you have more than 200, you should be even more worried. What happened with me in a few scenarios is like I inherited, I call as the product mess several times already. There was scenarios that I started as a product manager and I had the chance of building a product backlog from the beginning. But that's more seldomly. Most of the case, I inherited something which I had no idea what it was. And one of the jobs I started, my manager told me to get familiar with our product, Go through the product backlog during your first week, and then after we talk. What I find there was something very scary. It was 1,762 items. Repeating, 1,762 items. And I look at that, I didn't know where to start. And then what I started doing was talking to people. And then I talked to someone, and someone would tell me, yeah, this is not for now, it's for later. I would talk to somebody else, a person, I don't remember about this, and so on, and so on. I realized I was just wasting my time. And when I look at the product backlog, I had no idea the direction to go. And the items wouldn't help me. So I decided to do something a bit different than going through all the items. I looked at everything that was not touched for the last 6 months, and I deleted them. Yeah, I decided to delete and see what happens. And what happened is we used Jira, and a lot of people received emails. And I got 2 emails back. One from a stakeholder saying, I swear to God, I didn't write this nonsense. Thanks for deleting. For sure I didn't write that. And then another from a QA saying, oh, thanks for closing it. This bug doesn't exist anymore. So, all right. So remove around 800 items, and that's what I get? Okay. So I kept doing that. And eventually I got to the backlog for around 100 items, and from there I could work. So it's different. Because if you have a very extensive product backlog, you have a lot of distractions. So it's not fun. And the other scenario, it is about the waiter. And the waiter is something that is an anti-pattern of product managers. Remember when I said I started my job as a product manager in 2012, I had no idea what it was. So you could describe my job as a waiter. You picture the scenario. You go to a restaurant. The waiter comes to you and asks, what would you like to eat? And then you say what you would like. Maybe you say, I'd like to have the chef's burger. And then you look at the waiter and say, but without onion, please. I don't like onion, so just remove the onion. Waiter suggests something. Do you want some side thing? Maybe French fries or sweet potatoes. You say, oh, I would go with the sweet potatoes. Anything to drink? Then you say, yeah, maybe I take this and so on. So the waiter takes down a note, goes to the kitchen, hangs on the wall, and if you're lucky, you get your burger without the onions, but only if you're lucky. But when you look at product managers, what happens? So my scenario in 2012 would be, I go to the business stakeholder and say, tell me about your requirements. And they will say, this is what we need to achieve and so on. And then I would make suggestions on top of the requirements. And then eventually, instead of hanging on the wall so the kitchen would cook, I would hang on the backlog and the soft engineers would deliver. But what is the problem in this scenario? The waiter didn't have the job of understanding if I should eat the burger. Maybe I have high cholesterol. I shouldn't be eating that at all. But it's not a job of the waiter to understand that. The client makes the decision. If the client wants to eat the burger, yeah, the waiter will deliver the burger. That's it. But when it comes to product management, actually, it is your job to understand the why behind the what. So you are not supposed to get the requirements. You are supposed to understand what they are for and find solutions that are worth building. If you just gather the requirements, you miss the why. So you need to understand the why. How does that deliver value? Because if you end in a situation that you aim to please the stakeholders, that may be so, you end up pleasing stakeholders, but you learn the hard way that the wants from business stakeholders are not always aligned with the needs from customers. So that's why behaving as a waiter is not going to help. So you need to understand the why. So the third trap is about the outdated items. So when you look at your backlog, what is the average age of your backlog items? If you tell me that is anything older than 6 months, you have a problem. Because the backlog age should reflect the time it takes for you to learn. And if it takes longer than 6 months, it will be very, very problematic. Let me give you a scenario. In one of the places I worked, we were very resistant from removing backlog items. Someone would say, yeah, you just put at the bottom and then you forget about it. And I wanted to remove it. But people were against. They would say, we are losing work. And I would say, we are creating distraction because then we need to talk about these things. And we should not be talking about these things. Then it happened that one person came back from maternity leave. And as this person came back, she looked at me, it was middle of a sprint, and said, hey Dave, what should I be working on? First, product managers are not software engineers feeders. You should not tell them what to work on, should align on what to achieve. But I said, oh, I need to think about it. Let me see what is important right now, but I come back to you. That day I had a lot of meetings and I couldn't come back to her on time. The next day during the daily, she said, I'm working on this newsletter item here because actually it was there in the backlog before my maternity leave. So I remember that. And I said, but your maternity leave was 2 years ago. She said, yes, but I refined this. So I remember. Said, but now we have actually one goal that is to reduce the newsletter because we are losing customers. They are not so interested in being bombarded with emails anymore. She said, yeah, but it's in the backlog, so I took it. So I had to talk to her to walk her out of that. She had already started coding something that was totally irrelevant. And I wasted my time, her time, and everyone else had to hear all of that nonsense. If I had the guts of removing that from the backlog, none of this conversation would have happened. You may look at me and say, well, but what about the things that are worth and we talk in the future? If something is really important, it will come back to you. No worries. It comes back. And the backlog item should be just a reminder of a conversation. If it is more than that, then it's kind of talking about doing the work instead of doing the work. So, not really recommended. And when you look at your backlog, what do you see there? Do you see clear goal where you want to land, something that you can tell a story? Or do you see something that actually you don't understand what that is? So I have a godson. I don't have kids, but I have a godson in Brazil. And I was talking to him, and he looked at me and said, hey, David, you know what I want for Christmas? I want green sunglasses. I said, wow, nice. He said, hey, and I also want new flip-flops and a PlayStation 5 and a new Marvel t-shirt and a cap and maybe a hoodie. I really like your hoodie. And I was trying to picture, he wants flip-flops, a hoodie, PlayStation 5, a cap. How does these things come together? If you look at your backlog and you cannot picture how those things come together, you are failing being a product manager because a product manager is a value maximizer. So you need to understand how your product backlog accelerates value delivery, not feature. Creating features for the sake of creating it won't cut. That won't help you. It will distract. It's very dangerous. So another thing, which is the last trap, then I will stop talking about trap and I will start talking about solutions. When you create a solution, do you know which problem that solves? Because if you don't know the problem that solves, you might end up in a situation that you create a problem you shouldn't have in the first place. What am I talking about here? I had a situation once. It was in Brazil. So what we were doing there, we were creating solutions for promoters that would go all over Brazil and so on. And they would collect data and so on. Some of the promoters were trainers, so they would distribute their knowledge to other promoters, Brazil, worldwide. And Brazil is quite a big country. And we realized that many of these trainings happen manually. And the business analysts struggle to consolidate the data and understand the effectiveness of the training. A business analyst came to me and said, what if we digitalize all of this and we have a training platform and so on? I like the solution, it was beautiful, it smelled good. And I could see that. So we decided to work on that and we started working. We worked on that for around 2 months. And then, of course, we needed to make a big show right out of that. It was nice. We created a training platform that could be used by the promoters that were training the others. So we decided to make the launch in the south of Brazil, where most of the promoters were. So we flew from São Paulo to Porto Alegre. And then there in Porto Alegre, we were about to present. There were around 50 people in the room, and presented the solution that was supposed to be a game changer for them. But then they look at me and ask, really like what you created, but can you help me understand one thing? How am I supposed to use that when I'm traveling? And I said, well, you can use your laptop and connect on a hotspot. I said, yeah, but I actually travel by plane. And that's the moment I use to create the trainings and to prepare for everything. So by plane? I said, yes, by plane. And then it turned out that our solution was not natural for them. It was very good for the business, but not good for the users, because the users were always on the move. At the moment they could work there, on creating the training was in the airplane. They flew a lot. So we failed. So we solved a problem that actually didn't exist, and we created another problem. And because we created another problem, what we had to do was to find a way to upload the bloody Excel into the system, and we created more problems. So start with the problem, and if you don't know exactly the problem you're solving, it's a sign you're solving the wrong one. So keep in mind that when you look at your backlog, the longer it is, the less agile you can be. Once I wrote a blog post and I called it, deleting your product backlog is your salvation to become agile. And there's one reason for that. Sometimes I recommend teams to do that, because then you're going to talk about the things that are important for the moment. And agile is about using what you know to discover what you don't. It's about progressing continuously. And if you put your backlog, it's kind of, you're going to drive forward looking backward, and eventually you crash your car. So looking at the 5 traps we have here, just keep in mind the mountainous backlog. Remember, 1,762 items. What about the other? Once in, never out. It's like a dinosaur backlog. The 60-year-old wish list, very dangerous. Solving solutions that actually, you just solve solutions without problems. So implement these and it doesn't help. And focus on pleasing stakeholders over satisfying users. Remember, the wants from business stakeholders are not always aligned with the needs from customers. But the question is, how do we move on? Because a mismanaged product backlog will maybe transform your team into a water scrum file if you use Scrum. If you don't use Scrum and you work with a backlog, maybe it traps you, and you will descend from product manager to backlog manager, as I have been for a few years. Now, when we look to the next part, how do we overcome the backlog trap? There are different ways to overcome the backlog trap. So one of the things is having a mindset of cleaning your product backlog. And here I would like you to picture your home, just to imagine. You do some different levels of cleaning in your home. For example, every day when you wake up, you make the bed. When you visit the toilet, you clean after yourself. You have shower, you brush your teeth. When you have breakfast at home or you cook something, you clean the kitchen and so on. So you do that every day. Maybe once a week or twice a week or whatever it's necessary, you do some more advanced cleaning. So you remove the dust, you wipe the floors and so on, and you do these kind of things. And when you have some special occasions, like maybe your mother-in-law is visiting you or your mom, so you need to clean the place you don't remember that they can get some dust. Because if my mom comes here, she will find some secret place that can be a bit dusty, but I didn't even know the place existed. But she will find that, and she will have serious conversations with me. So I will do a serious cleaning. But now think about it. What happens if you stop doing the basic cleaning? You decide, I'm not going to make the bed anymore. Whenever I go to the kitchen, whatever, I leave the way it is. I don't care anymore. And the bathroom, you say, yeah, who cares? Well, I think it doesn't take long, so you don't even want to enter your home. It becomes very disgusting. So if you stop doing the weekly cleaning, then you cannot even breathe. What happens with the backlog if you don't take care of that? It will happen the same. So let's talk about different ways of managing the backlog. So here, unfortunately, we're not going to have the animation, but I will explain then to you how it works. So in a traditional backlog management, generally the backlog is very gigantic. So you have everything. You have old promises, you have new promises, and you have nice to have. So everything is in the same place. They don't get separated. It's not fun. What I recommend doing is having a lean backlog management. You take your big backlog and you separate in two things, new and old. And then you look at me. What is the meaning of new and old? That is something you need to define. New can be something related to your learning. So if you're learning, it takes like 2 months for you to learn. So you separate the backlog. What is or was created after like a latest 2 months ago and everything else. But if you say my learning time is like 3-6 months, then that would be the case. So what you do with the other items, instead of making your product backlog bigger, you make the size of the trash bin bigger. The trash bin is your friend. You just take everything that is old and you let it go. So you can focus on the new. Because only when the old goes away, the new finds its space. So good, then you have a smaller backlog. But the cleaning part didn't finish yet. What you can do next, you look at your goal. What are you trying to achieve right now at this moment? Quarterly goal, strategic, whatever. You need to have a goal. Then you ask questions. How does this backlog item contribute to the goal? If it doesn't contribute to the goal, goes to the trash. If it contributes to the goal, remains in your lean backlog. You may look at me and say, but what about the keeping the lights on work? That's different. That's something like bug fixing, like some technical debt you may need to pay off, some refactoring, but you need to decide about this. This is about keeping your product sustainable. It is different than implementing a feature for the sake of it. So that is why you need to keep the balance. So you separate the keeping the lights on work, yeah, but you still need to prioritize that. It's not because you have a bug that you need to always find a way of solving it. Only those that are important. So what you want to see is the second part. So you don't want to see a traditional backlog management because that will be distracting. You want to see a lean backlog management. And as I said, it's okay to increase the size of the trash bin. Don't be afraid of doing that. But be afraid of having a product backlog that is so massive that you get distracted and you cannot advance on that. So, not something funny. But now, let's say, remember the home example. Imagine your home was a mess. You did the cleanup. No, it's nice. But if you don't take care of that, it's going to happen the same again. So how do you take care of this? So the very first thing is developing the mindset. So you make your product backlog beautiful and clean enough. And then you need to keep it clean. There are some things you can do for that. So let's talk about two things here. One is a reflection I would like you to do. How often do you say yes to something? Think about it. If you're saying yes more than you're saying no, we have a problem. High chance that you need to say no 10 times more than you say yes. It is a matter of focusing. You remember the first line we had here? A lot of ideas are going to come in your direction. You need to choose the ones that are not going to distract you. So keep in mind, every yes you say is a new responsibility you get, while no is a decision to remain focused. You need to pick your choice. So being a product manager, you receive a lot of requests and you have a choice, yes or no. Now let me tell you what doesn't work. My first strategy of saying no was very simple. I would say no 3 times to whatever came in my direction without thinking. So I would just say no, no, no. And if the person would come back the fourth time, I would listen. So it's true that I reduced the amount of requests, but my boss increased the amount of emails she received. And I got a new nickname back then. First I was Mr. Y, because I asked too many why questions. People didn't like that much. But then I became the business blocker because I was too annoying. I rejected everything. That didn't help. So don't say no directly. That is not really well accepted. Now, let me give you a better strategy. If you want to say no, you need to help people say no to themselves. So ask questions. And not only why do you want that? Because why is a very confrontational question. If you ask why, you put people in the defensive mode. It's better to ask what for or how. Rephrase that. Few questions you can ask, like, how does this contribute to our product vision? How does this enable the goal we are pursuing right now? How do you know this is going to create value? How do you define success? How is this more important than what we are working right now? So you ask questions and you see that the person won't have. And might be the person becomes very pushy and you say, which evidence do you have supporting that? And then you can also make your problem their problem. If I say yes to this, what can I say no to? So have an exchange. And within this, you will see that some people will already refrain from pursuing that. And some things will be just unrelated to your vision, to your strategy. So it means it's not for now. And it means it's fine not to put into the backlog. Remember, if it is really important in the future, it will come back to you. Don't make your product backlog a wish list. The product backlog is not supposed to be a wish list. So this is one way you can do. Because when you say no, it unlocks focus to deliver valuable solutions. And the next part, you remember what we talked about when my mom visits here. I need to do special cleaning to ensure everything is fine. So there are moments in the product management that you need to do the special cleaning as well. And these moments would be when you are changing your goal. Maybe it's the quarterly plan, yearly plan. Every company has a different pace, but there will be some things. In the traditional way, it would happen like this. So you start with a backlog size, and then you go to the next quarter, and it will be something like new requests, all the items down, new items up, and then it doesn't take long to have a massive product backlog, which is not fun and not what we want. If you have that, everyone wants just to run away because it's very complicated. But you can do differently. What if you do something like this? Every quarter, once you go to the quarter, you reflect on your learnings. And then you say, new learnings come in and old items go out every quarter. So you ensure that your product backlog grows sustainably because you are focusing on what matters most. So you are doing a more serious cleaning in your product backlog. It becomes more relevant and less distracting. So here is about driving forward, looking forward, not driving forward, looking backward. You don't want to crash your car, I guess. And how can you create this mentality? When I had an idea some time ago, I think it was around 2 years ago, got a little bit annoyed of all of these things that were happening, feature factory and so on. And I challenged the relevance of the Agile Manifesto. I still see it's very important, but I challenge some of the principles because they are very software oriented. I said, yeah, that helped us get here, but to go further, we need to focus more on the product. So I wanted to create a product manifesto. And I had a chance of collaborating with people from all over the world, and we crafted a product manifesto. One of the things that we discussed there a lot, and this came from Alex, was about the product backlog item age. And then we came up with this. How do you treat the age of your product backlog? Because if your product backlog ages like wine, actually it's not the older it gets, the better it becomes. The older it gets, the more confusing it becomes. But if you treat the product backlog item age as milk, then it means it will spoil fast and then you have to throw it away. Then you ensure the teams can focus on what is most relevant. So my recommendation to you is following one of our principles in the product manifesto, which is keep the product backlog clean. backlog items age like milk, not like wine. This is a principle you can follow and can be quite helpful if you do so. And now you may look at me, well, my scenario is very far from where I am. What I tell you is step back. So, what if you can have just a perspective as if you are outside your team and reflect? You challenge the status quo. How can you do that? You can do a health check with the team members around you and so on. So, you can understand opportunities that you could improve your product backlog. So, what you could do here, for example, run this health check with your team. Look at the product backlog. Do you have a due date? If you say product backlog items live forever, then you put here on the left. And the more you have items on the left, the more opportunities you have to do something better. Remember when we started this webinar here, when we were looking about how you perceive your practice of product backlog management, there was room for improvement. You can use these to find where you can improve. Maybe you start putting a due date. Maybe you ensure that your backlog items are goal related. If not, you just get rid of them. If deleting them scares you, just archive them. But don't keep in the bottom. Just get them out of your sight. Archiving is better than putting in the bottom. I would still recommend deleting, but archiving is good enough. If you look at the size of your product backlog, is it too big? And too big for me is something like if you would implement everything you have in the backlog, it would take maybe 6 months. So it means that you are doing kind of a project management instead of product management, because product management is about building to learn. So it means you don't know all the answers right now, and it's okay. And then you uncover the answers on the way and you adapt the direction. What about the structure of the backlog? When you look there, can you tell a story about it? Or it will be like my godson, you have no idea what he's talking about. And how do you organize that? Do you focus on requirements or learning? These are different things, and they represent also opportunities. So you can do that with your team, and you can try improving it. And I would tell you, you always have a choice. You have the opportunity of just bow to the status quo and get stuck whatever you are. Maybe it's good, maybe you like where you are, then you get stuck there. Comfort zone. Or maybe you get comfortable with the uncomfortable, which is challenging the status quo and have a chance of better tomorrow. So I would ask you, what is your choice? So I hope you have got some insights here on this lesson today. We had some hiccups here on the presentation, but I hope still you enjoyed. I wanted to share something with you today that if you want to go a step further and benefit from more insights about product management and so on, I created a course that maybe it will speak to you. It is about the anti-BS product management, where I share practices that helps many teams move away from classic product management to more modern one. It's a bit thought-provoking, but the students have been enjoying a lot. Maybe you check it out, and if you are up for that, it can be helpful for you. So it's not this one. This one is a little bit outdated. We need to move to another. That was the previous presentation. I sent in the chat.
I will make sure to send it with the follow-up email. I am going to now remove the... Sorry, I'm just trying to remove the presentation, but I couldn't. Anyways, I will just move on with it then. And we can have this one here if you like to zoom in. And is the QR code still relevant?
No, this one is outdated. I'm running this course now for those who want to attend, but the voucher is not valid anymore. So
Okay.
the one I shared with the others was the video course that has also a live session about Ask Me Anything, takes place once a month, but this one was another.
Okay, then I will make sure to update the correct one to the follow-up webinar, follow-up email. Now we can, I think, move on to questions and answers. And here is our little title comes. And the first question that I would like to have before moving on, so many learnings here. First of all, I'm going to be visited by my mom in 10 days. So make sure to like clean everywhere first. I'm not a product manager though, but now I know how to manage a product backlog. So I'm sure that was really insightful for all the product managers that we have today. Okay, so the first question comes from Richard.
So just to clarify, lean backlog management separates technical debt from feature enhancement requests. Is that correct? I wouldn't call it only technical debt. Should I answer already?
Sorry, David. And he also says tech debt refers to bugs, system upgrades, etc. The source is typically engineering. Some tech debt is related to key TLO, he says.
Yeah, so let me try and explain. So I refer to keep the lights on work to separate. It's still in the same backlog. That's something I'm not suggesting you to put on the trash. I'm suggesting to keep it and balance it because you still need to ensure the product is sustainable and running well in a healthy way. So by that, technical debt has different interpretations. There's technical debt created deliberately, that you create that within the intent of building to learn, then to scale. So this technical debt, I say you need to pay off once the feature has proven its value. There's technical debt due to negligence, different ones. So there are different things. But what I suggest is think about the keep the lights on work that are necessary to ensure your product is sustainable. This you keep in the backlog. But this is not about saying refactor everything just for the sake of refactoring. You need to understand why you are doing that and how that contributes to keeping your product sustainable. Because sometimes I see teams refactoring things because they don't like the code, and it's something that is not has not been updated or evolved over the last years. And actually, that is something I would say don't do it. But if something in the core of the product is continuously involved, yes, then pay that technical debt off and so on. Hope that helps.
Thank you for clarifying that. And the other question comes from Evan. You mentioned figuring out your learning time to determine old versus new. Can you expand more on how you figure this out, please?
Sure. So, for example, in a startup, let's imagine a B2C. I'll give you an example in one of the places I work. So we had a chance of learning very fast. So we would run product experiments every week, and we would put something in the product every week, and we would learn that. That means that what we started with today, probably in a month now, would become outdated because we would have learned and proven ourselves wrong already. So we have evolved. So the learning time, it means how long does it take for you to run experiment with your customers, test your assumptions, falsify some of them, and then adapt. This is your learning time. Ideally, that doesn't take longer than a month. But it can be in some situation that you are in a B2B industry that is more complex that can take a few months. So it is about the discovery journey, testing your assumptions, and so on. That is a moment that you say, if our backlog is way longer than this learning cycle, it is a sign that you are transforming your way of working into project management.
Thank you for answering that too. We have two questions from, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Cici, I want to say. Here it comes. Hi, David. Thanks for the great inspirations. I have two questions. One, I will continue on reading. One, how would you recommend assessing the value of ideas, an instrument or a way of collaboration? Two, what if the goals are not set clearly? Maybe nobody in the company feels confident about setting high-level goals. That was it.
Okay, let's take one by one here. So how do you assess the value of your idea? So let me say how you don't do first. Don't create a crazy Excel file or a spreadsheet where you put a lot of parameters and then you create a scoring system and you try using that. That will make you ultra confident the idea is the right one. So for me, it's more about exchanging. I like filtering out in the beginning. So I look at the ideas we have and I say, what are the ideas that relate to our vision? So these ones we keep, the others we throw away. And then I say, what are the ideas related to our current strategy? So is our strategy now about growth? Is it about retention? Is it go to market? So we keep the ideas contributing to our strategy. And now we go to the other aspects. Looking at the idea, so let's have a discussion. And I like say comparing one against the other and decide how you rank them. Because it's not only about having the value of the idea, it is how fast can you test the ideas? Because most of the ideas won't work as expected. So you need to drop the bad one as fast as possible. So what I like is making incremental bets, not investing a lot of time prioritizing. Because I remember one of the challenges most of you put there, it is the prioritization. Generally, the prioritization becomes a big challenge because we overcommit. An idea would be a small bet. Like, how can we learn if this idea is worth pursuing? You can look at the idea and say, this idea would impact 50% of our audience with medium impact. And we believe we can do it. So this will say, all right, so how can we test this? Is it really valuable or not? So be creative and test your idea as fast as possible. And then you decide if it justifies further investment. The first test you do should be some things you're talking about hours, not days or weeks, hours. So you run it quickly to see if the direction makes sense. And then you decide later if you continue investing or not. So you always have the chance of dropping. This is one thing. And the other question you have here, what if the goals are not set clearly? Well, then you need to correct that. So setting goals clearly, for me, it has some characteristics. So goals are not just where we want to land. Goals also help us understand the constraints we have and the guardrails. So for example, what can we do? So if our goal is to, let's say, to increase customer lifetime value, okay, that is something that is low to track, but what can we do with that? So um, can we reduce the price? Can we give vouchers? No, we cannot. So if you look, for example, the goal should tell you which trade-offs you can make. What are the things that you can play with, and what is the guardrail? For example, increase customer lifetime value while keeping the satisfaction at the current level. So you know what you should not hurt. But you know, for example, maybe you can increase the customer acquisition cost or something like that. So it's important to understand the metrics you have and how you can use them. And if the goal is just saying increase customer satisfaction, customer lifetime value, it's too narrow. So it needs to have more information there. And how do you fix this? You have conversation, and then you align with product leaders and so on.
Thank you for answering that question. We have one more question from Justin, but you might answer that in the previous question. Um, do you have any quick points on prioritization? What is choosing to remain in the backlog?
Let me read it again. So we have covered grooming in the backlog to keep it clean.
Would you like to say anything further than what you said to the before?
Yeah.
Question?
Oh, just one thing about the grooming. I don't like the name grooming. It's a little bit outdated. I prefer using refinement, so it's a bit better. So do you have any quick points on prioritizing what is chosen to remain in the backlog? I would say you start with the highest level of certainty you have. So I like prioritizing them. Like, what do we know? What is our level of confidence? If you say that your level of confidence, this is going to generate high impact, go for that. That's the first you should do. If you say your level of confidence is low, then you need to run some more experiments. That's how I would organize, trying to find where is the highest impact first and focusing on that, and then the others after. Hope that helps.
Thank you for answering that too. I actually have one question myself. So, who are the are involved in this cleaning backlog cleaning session?
The backlog manager should be accountable for the backlog. So the as a backlog, sorry, the product manager
Mhm,
should
mhm,
be a set backlog manager, but that is a misinterpretation. Sorry, that happens. Don't think you should be a backlog manager. But as a product manager, you will be the one accountable for doing that. So whatever, remember, your responsibility is to maximize value. So you should do it. But there's a tricky thing here. If you ask the others, can I delete your product backlog item? They will say no. You should do it and then explain why.
mhm.
That's why I said if your organization is more conservative, then archive it. And then once everyone gets used to see that you can archive and you don't come back to that, then you can start deleting it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of also makes you feel comfortable that you're not leaving your comfort zone too much. It's like actually, I would say getting comfortable in your like uncomfortable zone.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you, David. That was a great session. I enjoyed it myself too much. I hope you guys all learned something. Um, Please make sure to follow David on LinkedIn and his newsletter. He's working on a book now, so have your eyes on it. And I will make sure to include all these links and replay and all the key takeaways from today's session into the follow-up email. And make sure to have your eyes on airfocus upcoming webinars. We have amazing names lined up. We have Jeff Gotthelf after this, Tony Ulvik, Adam Greco. We got amazing learnings for you. So make sure to save your spot on them. Thank you, David, for the session again. Is there something you would like to say before we end this one?
Thanks for inviting me. And I would say just trust your guts and do what you think it's right, not what it's easy. Sometimes what is right is the hard thing, but it's the necessary one.
Okay, I will make sure to add this one too. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day, guys. Bye.